powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. We are live at the Gallery Bar booking games on this Monday. It is a Mosher Monday from Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. You saw yesterday the Inside the Birds pregame show and the Inside the Birds postgame show. You can check that out on their social media channels before and after every Eagles game. And, of course, the podcast is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Geoff Mosher here for Football at 4. And, of course, the overreactions are coming in, and the sky is falling down. How do you give up 35 points to the Detroit Lions, Geoff Mosher? So let's start with that side of the ball. The defense yesterday, giving up 35. Is that a cause for concern, or is this, hey, this Detroit team did some good things and they should be commended for it? Or was it more, I don't like what the Eagles did?
Yeah, I mean, both, right? I mean, there's certainly a cause of concern. I think anybody who watched the game and has eyes saw that they did not tackle very well. I think people also wonder why, when you're getting a team running all over you, why you wouldn't have your best run personnel in the game all the time. Jordan Davis obviously drafted as someone who should stop the run. I think where we talk about the difference between concern over what happens in week one versus concern for the long term is yet to be seen. So there are certain things that happen in week one that are mind-boggling and draw overreactions. You saw my tweet earlier, Mike. I saw you retweeted it. The Packers and Titans were both number 1 seeds last year. They both lost in week one by double digits. I guarantee you there was panic after those two losses, last year after week one about what would happen, and they both wound up winning the top seeds in their respective conferences. So will this be the same run defense the next week? Can't tell you. I have a feeling coaches are going to try to figure some of that stuff out. However, we did see certain things last year, whether it was on offense or defense, that were prolonged, that needed to be fixed, that didn't get fixed, maybe as soon as we would have liked them to be fixed. So the answers to those questions can only come by next Monday night and then after and then after.
Yeah, I was going to add, on defense specifically first, things that happened yesterday that might continue to happen. Were there some things that you're like, I don't know that they can fix this? Well, or were a lot of their mistakes fixable?
I think tackling always is bad. They always say week one is now the 4th preseason game. So I think if you watched a lot of football, around the league the last few days, you probably noticed some teams tackled well, some teams didn't. And there's some teams won yesterday and played well that did nothing in training camp, just like the Eagles did. So I don't even know if there's a correlation, because I know a lot of people are saying, well, that's what happens when you don't have a hard training camp and you don't do this, you don't do that. Some teams are the same way as the Eagles and fared fine. But it is September. It is common to see not great tackling. And then the Eagles did play a structure of defense where a lot of times they're throwing a lot of second-level players on the field, corners, safeties. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson now all of a sudden is a safety. He missed some tackles. Thought Maddox missed some tackles. I thought Marcus Epps made an amazing tackle in the first quarter. He came from about 20 yards away and blew somebody up right at the line of scrimmage, but he missed some tackles too. And remember, there are new starters in the secondary. So I can't promise anybody that it's going to get better, but I can say I'm sure they'll work on it, and they imagine that the coaches will try to do a few different things next time they're getting the ball ran on them like that to be more prepared for it.
Geoff Mosher's with us, Football at 4, Eagles, Lions, 38-35. My word, Geoff, has been that the Eagles survive. Why so much of Josh Sweat and Reddick in coverage instead of them pursuing the quarterback? That's a big question on this Monday. I don't know if it's an overreaction question, but it's a question of why they drop back in coverage instead of doing what Eagles fans love to see, which is take down that QB.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting schematic question, Pete, that we've talked about on Inside the Birds, Adam and I, a lot, which is the idea of that you're using an overhang player now in Hassan Reddick. And then also you're turning Josh Sweat into a similar type of overhang player so that you can stand them up and look multiple, and that's wonderful. But they're really pass rushers by nature. Hassan Reddick does have experience in coverage, but the reason why they turned him into a pass rusher in Arizona and then Carolina did the same thing is because he's not very good in coverage. However, if you call them pass rushers, what happens when the offense comes out, the opposing offense comes out in like kind of a run package. So you think Hassan Reddick is just going to be the extra run defender, but then they're play actioning or they're passing anyway out of a run formation. Well, then those guys have to drop because you can't have 5 guys running at the quarterback when it's a run play, or you can't have 5 guys running at the quarterback if it's play action, because that leaves a void in the flats and in carrying the wheel routes. And those are areas that you saw the Lions were able to target at times with either their running backs catching passes or TJ Hawkinson. And that's because on a couple occasions, you saw Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick kind of roaming out there, taking up space, but not really knowing what they're doing. They do have to figure that out. I tend to think that the number of times we saw that was not as much as it seemed. It just seemed that when you did see that, it was a bad play and it sticks out more.
Yeah, in math, Jeff, they always say sample size, right? You guys, and this is what you do so well at Inside the Birds, is break this stuff down, rehash it, analyze it, look at it, talk about it and discuss it and move on. I guess my other thing that I wanted to get into a little bit was the news today about Derek Barnett. How does that impact the D-line rotation moving forward? Because if you were me, and you just go to a depth chart and you look, okay, 1, 2, wait a second, there's not a lot of names back there behind. How does that impact the D-line and the rotation?
Yeah, I think it's more significant than it might seem at face value, Pete, because although he was technically, if you just go by defensive end, he's 3rd on the depth chart, right? You've got, maybe 4th, actually. You have Sweat, 3rd. Sweat, you have Brandon Graham, and you have Derek Barnett. But as far as edge rusher, it's more like 4th because Hassan Reddick is also an edge rusher. So he's really 4th, but he does play some important hand in the dirt type snaps at defensive end. He was out there, and now that he's gone, Teron Jackson, who's a 2nd-year player and a 6th-round pick, who I thought he had a good camp actually. So nothing bad that he's now number 3 there at defensive end and maybe 4th in pass rusher. But that just leaves you thin at the only position, and this is a surprise. I can't remember the last time we said the Eagles were thin at defensive end, but they really are. It's because of the addition of the strong side linebacker, who's also a pass rusher. They allowed themselves to be a little bit thinner at hand in dirt defensive end. But the weird thing is they didn't keep any of them on the practice squad, right? So they've got 2 spots open on the 53. I imagine at least one of them is going to have to go to some kind of defensive end out there.
Jeff, I likened Gannon, who I did not think had a good game yesterday. I did not like the game plan, to being a kid on Christmas who gets a new toy, tries to rip it open, and then wants to play with it right away before reading the instructions. Do we get a sense that he really needs to learn Reddick and Jordan Davis and how to incorporate these guys a little better, or was it disappointing to see how he implemented them?
He had all OTAs, all training camp to figure out what he could do with Jordan Davis or anybody, Hassan Reddick. But I think you're right in that there was a mismatch. It seemed like he was way more aggressive up front. You saw some pretty intricate blitzes that we did not see last year. Avonte Maddox blitzing. We saw some really interesting things from a pressure standpoint, but from a back end standpoint, which is what he emphasizes so much, confusing a quarterback, changing your coverages, post-snap movement. I don't think there was a whole lot of that. And then couple that with the fact that they didn't get a whole lot of pressure on Jared Goff, it made it a little bit easier for Goff to figure out where he wanted to go with the football. And I don't know if enough people are talking about this, and I'm not trying to be a negative guy. It's always great to win. But would the Lions drop 6 passes yesterday? There were about 6 drops by the Lions that could have changed the game. And also there were about 3 or 4 bad passes from Jared Goff that, when you're facing Kirk Cousins or somebody who's a little more accurate and strong-armed, you're gonna feel the effects of that.
Jeff, one of the narratives going in, Geoff Mosher with this football at 4, one of the narratives going in was how banged up the Lions' offensive line was, but they seemed to dominate at times up front. Was that something you expected, or were you surprised by that?
Well, I didn't think – the fact that Ragnow, their center, who's a good player, played really helped them. The right guard, Big V, was out, and then his backup was out, so they were on a backup right guard. The coaches made a third string right guard. The coaches had made a big deal. I'm talking about the Lions coaches last week in their press conferences to talk about how much better Penei Sewell was at this time than he was at this time last year, transitioning to right tackle. Decker's been a good left tackle. I don't think it's a great offensive line. I think it got a little bit more love than I thought in the preseason than it would, but good enough to get the job done. They certainly were able to pick up what the Eagles were doing, and it's a little concerning that the Eagles, who are supposed to be strong up front, did not get that much pressure on Jared Goff.
And then conversely, the Eagles' offensive line, I thought early in the game, they looked like they had not been together for a year at all. Keep in mind, this is the same offensive line last year. They looked like they had never played together. I guess it's a byproduct maybe of not playing in the preseason at all, but I thought they settled in and kind of took back over in that game. But overall, I don't know. They put up 44. They ran the ball all over that team last year. They didn't have the same success against this defensive front as they did last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So here's what I'm. Obviously the All-22 isn't out yet, but I have been able to watch the first half. I paid attention to offense, and what I feel like what happened. Obviously, the Lions sent a tremendous amount of pressure, and it wasn't just like we're going to put 6 guys and rush them. They stunted, they twisted. They disguised their blitz. They would overload one side, drop those guys, blitz from the other. That's the kind of stuff that, as you mentioned, Mike, requires a lot of communication and also can take you by surprise at times. They call them unscouted looks. So Aiden Hutchinson, it was their first time facing him. Of course, they know he's the number 1 pick, but you don't really know. You don't have any NFL tape of him. You only have college tape. And I'm not sure Michigan used him the way the Lions did, which is inside. As kind of a Brandon Graham inside defensive tackle in the pass rush.
They kept saying on the broadcast, they kept calling it that NASCAR package like the Giants. They brought that up many times during the broadcast yesterday.
Yeah, and that guy, I got to be fair, I thought he played like he was shot out of a cannon. So he looks like he's going to be a pretty relentless player for them. And he gave Sayamalo a little bit of trouble. He gave Mailata a little bit of trouble in pass protection. And then, like you were mentioning, I just think that there were a lot of times that the Lions either brought more than 5 or made the appearance that they were going to bring more than 5. And that throws your protection schemes into disruption. For example, there was one play where they brought 5, so it should be blocked up, but they brought a nickel cornerback from the opposite side and then dropped the linebacker who they thought there was going to blitz from the left side. So the line did what they call the shift, right? Your slide protection to the left, but that left the cornerback from the right unaccounted for, even though it should have been 5-on-5. And that's just good scheming by Aaron Glenn.
Jeff, how about your thoughts on Jalen Hurts? Because obviously he was much of the discussion in the offseason. They're only going to go as far as Jalen Hurts takes him. He ran a lot, ran 17 times. He certainly had that connection going with A.J. Brown, the unbelievable pass down the field to Brown. I think it was 54 yards, but he did miss on a few. What was your thought, maybe your grade on Jalen Hurts overall?
Having, rewatched what I'm watching, I feel like when Jalen Hurts threw the ball, he made good decisions. To take that many hits and run that much, not turn the ball over, I think is very, very critical and speaks to him knowing what he wanted to do. He also knows he can get out of trouble very quickly, which he did a lot of times. I think the Eagles themselves should re-examine a few things and say, maybe we could have mixed about 5 to 7 more conventional downhill under center runs that might not give us a 20-yard pass or a 20-yard Jalen Hurts run, but takes a hit off of our quarterback, and our running game is good enough so that I still think we can still go downhill under center, put a lot of bodies there, and get 5, 6, 7 yards to help keep the pressure off of our quarterback. I think we can all agree that 298 runs a year, which is what I think he's on pace for after 17, is not a sustainable pace for anybody, and it's not good for anyone involved.
A lot of people talking about, and I'd have no problem with this at all, that he seemed locked in on Brown, and I look at it as if you're going to give me Brown, I'm going to take Brown the whole day. I don't need to spread the ball around. So that was my thought on that in terms of not spreading the ball around. Was Detroit gave you no reason to spread the ball around, right?
Correct. Sort of. It's all about really the offense the Eagles are running itself. They're running a heavily RPO offense. That's usually going to involve 1 or 2 reads in the passing game if you're deciding to pass. And in the passing game, as you just mentioned, A.J. Brown was open a lot. I mean, Detroit sold out. So that I don't know how many teams are going to try to rush Jalen Hurts with that many guys. Look, I do think that the blueprint is out. It went back to last year's Giants game that in order to the best way to try to beat this guy is to send pressure from his right side, force him to his left, and force him to make throws. Now, you can do that from zone. You can do it from man. You can pressure from a lot of different concepts. Detroit chose a lot of man defense. And A.J. Brown, as we all saw, is a man defense beater. I mean, he is a man.
Yeah.
And so a lot of his best plays came on third down. So it's hard to fault Jalen Hurts for getting the ball to the guy who you traded a first-round pick and paid over $20 million to. But not every team is going to attack the Eagles that way. So I'm pretty confident going forward that we're not going to just see 20 targets for Brown and none for Devontae Smith.
Right, and look, if teams defend Brown that way, you keep throwing it to him. If they defend him differently, I guess the question we had from a text message earlier was, okay, if they're doubling Brown, do you trust that Hurts can read that and then go to a second read and find Goddard or Smith as the open man?
Yeah, and I think in past games we've seen. I think by the end of last year, we were all saying, you know what, this offense is starting to run through Dallas Goedert, right? I'm thinking about how Dallas Goedert came on at the end of last year because Devontae Smith got off to a really nice start as a wide receiver. So I think Jalen Hurts, when he throws the ball, has made good decisions on where to go with the football. He does not throw he did not throw against the Lions, I'll say, a lot of passes where you felt, you were trying to force that to a guy when it wasn't there. The one thing I would say is he has to be careful about when he wants to ditch the ball as he's running away. It's one thing when you're near the sideline and you kind of like two-hand chuck it out, but he almost got called he could have gotten called, I think, for intentional grounding once or twice. So he's got to be careful from that standpoint.
Yeah, I guess the one other thing on the offensive side of the ball, in the end, I mean, Miles Sanders, I thought you can make an argument that they didn't use him enough yesterday or the run game enough yesterday.
Agree. Completely agree. I think that Miles Sanders showed that he deserves. And now some people will say, well, he never stays healthy, so you got to keep him down to 9 or 10. But that's why you have 5 running backs if you count the practice squad. I mean, you're well equipped at that position. So I thought Miles Sanders deserved more touches. I mean, the guy gives you the 24-yard run on 4th and 1, and then when they come back to their next third and one, they give the Boston Scott. And it's like, well, what were you trying to confuse them? I don't know. I just thought you get the most explosive element in your running game when you have when you have Miles Sanders out there.
Jeff, did you know any of these names, by the way? Billy Ray Barnes, Ted Dean, Clarence Peaks, or Theron Sapp from 1961? Gil was talking about that earlier, and I'm like, who are these guys? That's the last time they had 4 different running backs or 4 different guys do a rushing touchdown.
Nope.
I can't say it.
I said to my dad yesterday.
Are you guys surprised? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I said to my dad yesterday, a game from the 60s. My dad said, I remember the game, 1961. I was like, geez, I never heard of these guys. He was right on it. I'll give him 2 points for that.
I just wanted
must have been a really interesting game.
I just wanted to lighten things up for a minute while we're sitting here analyzing.
I think Rube tweeted that the Eagles beat the Cowboys like 41-7 that day. Well,
anytime they beat the Cowboys like that, it's going to be memorable for everybody involved.
Hey,
are you guys getting a lot of feedback about are people surprised about how RPO heavy the Eagles offense was, or that it didn't look any different from what they were expecting?
No,
I've gotten some emails on that.
A lot of the text messages today, and boy, we've gotten a ton, have mostly been about either not spreading the ball, that they threw the ball to Brown so much and Smith wasn't involved. And a lot of it was defensive oriented, that Gannon needs to go. He didn't send enough pressure. But nothing on the stylistic nature of the offense. Did you see any on that?
I had some people.
Modern and heavy, yeah. What are you getting, Jeff?
It's just some people reach out and say, I thought this offense was going to be a little bit more advanced. I thought Jalen Hurts was going to get to progression number 2 and 3 a little more. And I again, we're in week 1.
It may, but it wasn't necessary yesterday.
That's true. Plus, when you're getting pressured that much, I mean, it's not like you can just stand there and be like, oh, I'm going to go to second and third while Aiden Hutchinson and Charles Harris are breathing down my neck. Mm-hmm. But I think people need to really understand something. The offense you saw, that RPO-centric offense with runs by the running back, runs by the quarterback, the quick slants that you see if he pulls the ball, is the Eagles' offense.
Yeah.
All right? It is the Eagles' offense now and going forward. It's not a knock on Jalen Hurts. It's just that they have catered it to what they think he is best at.
Well,
so the idea, I think people want this to be like the old Carson Wentz 2017 or the Mike Vick 2000. It's not going to be a conventional drop back West Coast offense ever.
With A.J. Brown, though, I mean, he wins that slant almost every single time, so you take it.
Right.
And I thought
you take it.
I thought Hurts did a good job. There was a lot of plays where he hit Brown right in stride, and Brown caught it and just kept on going. He didn't have to stop. He didn't have to go behind him. I thought Hurts and Brown had a nice – and look, he threw the ball to Smith, hit him right between the numbers. Well, he only has one number, but it bounced off his chest. I mean, he had 4 targets. If you have 4 catches for 57 yards at the end of the day, you had a nice day. Unfortunately, a couple of the balls that were thrown to him one was like a bubble screen that he got rushed on. So, yeah, right. I'm not concerned about that. The one thing, I guess, what did Sirianni say today about Jordan Davis and his snaps? Because it was there was 2 plays that Davis was in the game that stood out that he ate the running back for lunch. 2.9 yards a carry when Davis was in the game, I read. 10 yards a carry when he was not in the game. So yeah. He said rotational. I didn't hear the presser, so I couldn't get the vibe.
He was asked why Jordan Davis didn't play more, and Nick Sirianni said, well, we have a bunch of guys, and he's part of a rotation. He's one of our rotational guys. And he was followed up with a question about, well, didn't it seem like there was a discrepancy to you when he was on the field versus the run or off? And he said he saw no correlation in that. And gotcha. Some of that is a little bit fair because there were a lot of guys who I just don't think were gap sound. But you drafted the guy because he's a great run stuffing. He's 340 pounds. You want to play these 5-2 fronts to get out of the run so you can force him into it. I mean, why did it take you like 3 series to get him in there? Makes no sense to me.
All right, Geoff
Unless
Mosher.
They just don't think he can hold up.
Right. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast is out with reaction. Don't forget the Inside the Birds pregame and postgame show with Trey Thomas yesterday on the postgame. I enjoyed that. Trey came in. I said, I got a nice glass of wine, he said. I'm breaking down the film. And the pregame was really good as well. So check that out on the Inside the Birds social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Geoff Mosher's back on Wednesday. Adam Kaplan here tomorrow on Football at 4. Thank you, Jeff.
Have a great one, Phils.